Howdy folks, Rudros here and welcome to another Lorcana Wednesday, and today we are going to be looking at the legends that will be coming out in Shimmering Skies and potentially shaping this entire meta. Legendaries are always fun to look at because they're rare cards, so they're fun to open in packs, but usually they have pretty unique effects too. But that also doesn't always mean that they're great. Some of them are very misfires, we'll say. So we'll see how these ones shape up. I'm going to go through each of them, give you my thoughts on them, as this is our final week here in Ursula's Return. And yeah, let's get right into it. So first we have Prince Naveen. He is a 4-cost uninkable, 3/3 stat line, a Singer 6. He is a hero prince if you happen to be doing a deck with that, although I imagine he's going to go in a Singer list. And when you play this character, you may play a song with cost 6 or less for free and 2 lore. So, ignoring his effects, his body stat line is actually okay. It sucks that he's uninkable, of course, but questing for 2 is nice. 3/3, yeah, he'll die to Medusa, but he is at least out of brawl range. That's not terrible. And his effect, when you play this character, you may play a song with cost 6 or less. So the most common popular singer character is the spectacular singer Ariel, and she lets you sing a song of cost 5 or less. So the only songs he really covers as a singer 6 that she doesn't. I looked it up. According to Dreamborn, there's only 3 songs with cost 6 in them, and that's the new Blast from the Past, the Pirate's Life, and Treasures Untold. None of these are amazing, and if you're doing the most popular singing deck is still Steel Song. None of these are Steel, so the only one you could even use in that list is Blast from the Past, and that doesn't really seem like a very good card, plus it's the only uninkable one. Now granted, if more come out in the future, this could get stronger, of course. So for right now, I think you just have him as he's kind of another Ariel. You know, he can sing Whole New World, he can sing Grab Your Swords. And speaking of those, so Ariel, like, one of the quote-unquote weaknesses of her is that she's slow, right? She's not actually slow, but if you're trying to use her for singing, she comes down, she has to wait a whole turn. Well, this one says you play him and you can immediately fire off Whole New World or Grab Your Sword or Along Came Zeus. Like, you don't have to do a 6 cost or less. I think if you play Prince Naveen and immediately shoot something with an Along Came Zeus, I think that's going to feel pretty good. Whole New World, probably not, because you probably spent all your ink playing him and then immediately using it, which means you then can't really benefit off of any of the cards you used with Whole New World. But maybe not. Maybe you're okay with that, especially if you've already got an Ariel on the field on turn 3. Okay, so you play him. You've got 2 cards left in your hand, Prince Naveen and Whole New World. You play the Prince Naveen, you immediately play the Whole New World. Now the Ariel can sing a different song, whether it's Bare Necessities or maybe Grab Your Sword against your opponent's board. That sounds really strong. Granted, it's another uninkable, and that deck already has so many good singers in it. I don't know if they need this guy. It also, of course, it does have to line up. Now, he could sing anything. Like, you don't have to sing Whole New World. He could just sing Strength of a Raging Fire. And usually, just when something is free, it's strong. You know, that's the entire premise of the singing deck. Why that deck even works is because, hey, it says cast most of the stuff in your deck for free. So this also says cast something in your deck for free. So will he ultimately make the final cut in these song decks? I don't know, but I also don't play that deck personally a whole lot to really, really know. But I think this at least has quite a bit of potential. Currently, I'm going to put this in the category of I expect this to see at least a little play. And if he ends up just being like, I would be surprised if the reason he doesn't see play, I would imagine it's more because the deck is already so solid and so functional that they just don't really need this character. But again, just playing him and playing for free, even if you just do Storm Rage on, that's a 3-cost song you didn't have to use. So again, the only reason I think that could maybe backfire is, well, it ended up being unnecessary. Like, I can have 1-cost Cinderella sing that, so why do I need to play another guy to sing it? So maybe he gets a little awkward for that, but he reads very strongly, so I'll be surprised if he doesn't show up, but I guess we'll find out. Unlike the other Amber Legend, Mirabelle Madrigal, and this is the Store Championship promo, and what a letdown of a promo it is, even though the art looks nice. So interesting, we got our first base 5 lore quester. You know, cards like Belle and Ariel and Tamatoa could hit those numbers, but on the card itself, they didn't have those values. Here you just have instead of them actually writing out the 5 pips, they just put a pip with the number 5 in it. So presumably anything we see in the future that goes above this, they'll just put that number there. And yeah, someone loved the idea of 5s. I guess it's supposed to represent the family members of the Madrigals, although there's way more than 5. So I'm not really sure. Here, let's type that in really quick. Madrigal. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because that's Camillo. I mean, that doesn't even count Dolores or Isabella or Pepe. So I don't really know the thing of 5s. Like, why is this? Okay, cost 5, 5, 5, quest for 5, and then the effect is based on 5s. I mean, I guess clearly it's supposed to be a family thing. I don't know. Somebody was really happy with this. Like, dude, what, we just make it all 5? It'd be brilliant. Anyway, all that aside, the card is absolutely terrible. I just cannot see how you're ever going to get this onto the field. It says you can't play this character unless you have 5 or more characters in play. That should also count something like a Mufasa, that Mufasa is playing the character to the field, and you can't do that if... So she's terrible after Mufasa, like a Be Prepared board wipe, because it'll have nothing there. And if you have 5 characters on the field, like imagine... So you couldn't even play this on curve, right? Because if you play 1 character a turn, 1, 2, 1 on 1, 2 on 2, 3 on 3, 4 on 4, then she doesn't count herself. You must already have 5, so you can't even play this on turn 5. So earliest you can play is turn 6, unless you lucked out and you got like 1 on 1, 2 1-drops on 2, that's 3, and then you just curved out naturally to 5. But that's assuming your opponent isn't interacting with your board at all, which, again, if they're not doing that, if you have 5 characters on board that haven't been interacted with in any way, they're all still there, so you can bring her down on turn 5, surely you've already won that game, right? What game state are you in that you're not winning? You already have 5 characters, and then you still have to wait a whole nother turn for her to do anything. You're probably not trying to attack or to attack with this card, so you're just trying to quest with it. So it just seems like a total dud. It seems like someone went in completely on flavor and theme over any actual practical playability. So this is going to be, which means I will probably pull this in a pre-release, because that's going to feel really bad. Next, we have the Genie, main attraction, 7 cost, uninkable, also a 5/5 stat line, quest for 2. While this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of their turn. This is a really cool effect. In Final Fantasy, this would be referred to as dulling and freezing. Essentially, it's a very popular ability, and there's this ice element, and so when you freeze a card, it just says that it can't ready at the start of the turn. It can be readied through other means, as this can as well. So a board-wide dull freeze on all their characters is super, super cool. So I love the effect, but I think this card is terrible, and I would be surprised if this sees play. Maybe in like a Blurple deck. Maybe because that deck tends to ramp, and I think the sooner you can get this online, the better. But if you have to wait till turn 7 to play this, it does nothing the turn it comes in. And playing 7, remember, this is the same level as Be Prepared. So for 7, I could use Be Prepared and wipe out the entire board, or I could play this Genie that then just sits there a turn and doesn't do anything. So it's insanely slow. Then let's say it lives a turn, you quest with it, or you challenge a location for 5, whatever you do, and now none of their characters can ready. Well, you've given them a whole turn of prep. So let's say they don't actually have an answer to the Genie. They don't have outright spot removal for it, and they can't do anything about the card. Well, if that's the case, they probably aren't going to quest with their characters that turn or challenge with their characters that turn. Now, you might think, well, that's great, right? I prevented them from challenging or questing for one whole turn. Well, yeah, that's a strong effect, except now your Genie's going to have to exert to freeze them, which means they're just going to run into the Genie and kill him. I mean, I guess maybe you could get into the standoff war where you say, okay, well, I'm not going to quest with Genie either then, and then while you don't quest. But even then, even if, let's say they quest out, they challenge out, and the Genie exerts, and you've frozen 3-4 things on the board. Okay, then any spot removal still gets rid of him, and in particular, any character with Rush can still deal with the Genie. Like, okay, that's great. Here's Maui. I'm just going to kill him immediately, and now they'll all start the next turn. I don't know. Maybe in practice it'll be a little better than it sounds, because it sounds insanely slow, and that you need all these situations, which, again, the effect as written is clearly incredibly powerful. that if they can't answer this and their just board is just frozen down, like, yeah, that's so much power. That's so much power, but also doesn't affect any new character they bring in too. I don't know, maybe there's some combination with like that new Elsa or anything that purposely exerts characters so that even if they try to get around it with new characters, you just completely prevent it. But I mean, this is also purple. This is the element or the ink color with the Merlin Madame Mim package, which got a new card this set. So I just can't see why you would want to slot this in. Maybe in Blurple. But, I mean, why not pay one more for Elsa and just guarantee lock two of them down for a turn? I don't know. I would love to be proven wrong on this card, but it reads insanely slow for such a cool effect. All right, our other purple card, Camillo Madrigal. I don't know why this character is deserving of a legendary, but here we are. 6-cost inkable. He's a 3/7 stat line and only quests for 1, but his ability, whenever this character quests, you may gain lore equal to the lore of chosen other character of yours, then return that character to your hand. So his stat line is terrible against Ruby because he dies to Medusa, but it's pretty decent against Steel since 7 willpower is a huge body. They're going to have to spend like a Zeus and a Baboom on it. So that's pretty good. He is inkable. That's really nice. Anytime you have cards like this, they're inkable. So the turn you play him, though, he doesn't do anything. He's just going to sit there a whole turn. And then he's going to quest. And you do have to have another character on the board. So if they can manipulate your board, Medusa Tremaine, Steel removal, whatever it is, that might make him quite a bit weaker. It's a fun idea to abuse cards, right? In a way, it's kind of like a Mim Snake Fox, even though it's not as instant. Okay, so let's say you have a goat on the board. You quest with the goat. The goat gains 1. You quest with him. He gains 1. Now you gain the lore of the goat, which is another 1, and then the goat bounces, which is another 1. So that's a total of 4 lore. That's okay. Or maybe it's a rabbit, so maybe you're not really into the lore as much, and you're just using it because now you've got another way to bounce rabbit back to hand. So it's kind of like a bigger, beefier version of Arthur, the old card from set 2, except this one's inkable and it has a bigger body. So again, it's way more resistant against Steel. And maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you don't need a big lore hit. Maybe you can just use something to abuse Rabbit and, Rabbit Goat, these cards that have these exit effects as well. But again, so you're talking about the Merlin Mim package, similar to Genie. Are you going to find room for this? Those cards are good because they're instant, because you can go goat, bounce it with a snake, goat again. And that's 3 instant effects you immediately hit. This one says play it and just sit there a turn. And unfortunately, I think Lorcana's already started trending in a bad way towards power creep and towards these cards that if they don't have an effect the turn they enter, they need to be super duper duper strong. And this one sounds just very conditional. Maybe it's a really good high end for Blurple that you can ramp up, you get him down, and you put down a Belle or a Tamatoa, or maybe even an Elsa. The Elsa comes in and freezes, she quests for 3, then he bounces her back, gets 4 out of it, and then you can replay her again. Like that sounds pretty cool. That's probably the effect that sounds the most interesting to me is an Elsa. Because, I don't know if you want to bounce a Tamatoa. I mean, if it wins you the game, if it goes, cool, quest for 7 with Tammy, bounce him, another 7, sweet, I win. But if it's not winning, but you could also use Dime and just keep that there. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to talk myself into it because it sounds neat, but I just think it's going to be too slow because it doesn't have an entry effect. I would love to be proven wrong, like with all these. I want to see all these cards. I'm going to stop saying that because it's true of all these. I want to see them all succeed, but this one just doesn't sound like it's it. So, Clarabelle Cow. I don't understand why Clarabelle Cow gets a legendary. Was this character that popular? Whatever. Anyway, so she's a 7-cost inkable. She has a shift 5, and I know we got some other cows that she can shift onto. 5/6 body. 2 lore. At the end of your turn, if chosen opponent has more cards in their hand than you may draw cards until you have the same number. So my guess is this card will either be insanely overpowered or completely unplayable. Usually effects like this, and we've gotten a few others in the set with like the Prince John's Mirror, and there's one with like Mufasa's or Simba's face in the clouds. Can't remember what it's called, but because likely what will happen is maybe you play this in some kind of aggro deck. You play some of the other small Clarabelles. You've dumped your whole hand. You shift her on, immediately quest, and now especially if they're like a control deck, you just draw up to their cards. Imagine like, oh, cool, you've got 7 in hand. I'll just draw a full 7 myself. I mean, that's insane if you can get that kind of card advantage. But is that actually going to happen? What if they have also emptied their hand quite a bit, and then in reality she just draws 1 or 2? 2 is still pretty good. A card that says draw 2 at the end of your turn, I don't hate that. Anything above 2 and just gets more and more valuable, right? 3. However, if they see you play a smaller Clarabelle to shift onto, are they going to like try to anticipate that and then play their hand out a little more so this doesn't benefit from it? Now, the nice thing is you don't have to shift this. You could just play this on turn 7, and especially if they have a big hand, you could really get a big payoff of that. So I just don't know. Like, these kind of cards are always tough to evaluate. Like, it'd be a good sideboard card because depending on the matchup, but I don't know. Maybe you also only needed to resolve once. Like, if you played a 7 cost that essentially said draw 3 cards at the end of your turn, and again, this is Lorcana, so it's not like they can interrupt or counterspell it to do anything, that'd probably be worth it, right? A 7 cost that can't die to Medusa, doesn't die to a Zeus, has a big enough body for that. Maybe that's worth it. I'm kind of talking myself into it a little more. Maybe that alone is worth it, that you don't even need to be able to shift it on. But again, what if it does nothing? Or do you want to play 7 for a card that doesn't do anything because they have less cards in hand than you? Or, I don't know. Yeah, see, the more situations and like, oh, well, the more specifications you add onto these, the weaker they get. If I'm paying 7, that's what Be Prepared wipes the board. That's what it does. What's another good 7 cost? Elsa, Ursula, I know those cost, 8 and technically, but comes in, frees 2 things. It always does that. Maleficent Dragon comes in, banishes something. It always does that. Tamatoa comes in, gets an item, and says, hey, you got to get rid of me because I'm going to quest and win the game now. This one, you could pay 7 for a card that does nothing, and that is not good. So, I don't know. I genuinely don't know what to think of this one. I think it will fall, and again, it's either going to be unplayable because it's just too situational, or it's going to be obnoxious, and you're going to hate seeing it and watching your opponents draw 6 or 7 cards off their hand, and you're going to be like, wow, well, that's really stupid. That shouldn't be a thing. So I guess we'll see where Clarabelle ends up. And our other Emerald card, which I think is a lot more obvious about its power level. This is Anna, the Diplomatic Queen. Has the stats of a Simba, 2/3, and is a 3-cost uninkable. When you play this character, you may pay 2 ink to choose one. Either you get a discard, one character of your choice gets +2 attack this turn, or you get to banish a damaged character and 2 lore. I mean, the body is like okay. It's technically a little undercurved because it has the stats of a Simba and it costs 1 more, but it quests for 2 lore, so that's pretty nice. Uninkable sucks. And it's just the effect is, there's a couple cards in this set that have this effect that you play them and then you can pay additional ink to actually give them an effect. Because if you play this on turn 3, it's just a body. It doesn't get those additional powers, and it's a body that dies to brawl. So I don't think I ever want to play this on 3. Surely there are better things. I mean, this is the same cost as Diablo. Like, I'd rather play Diablo and the threat he's going to represent turn after turn after turn. Yeah, he's got a weaker body, but he also says if you can't remove me and you need spot removal because I have evasive, I'm just gonna snowball out of control for this person. I don't know. Maybe in practice these will feel better than they read, because I don't like it's a 3 cost, so I want to play it on turn 3. Oh, but actually I need to play it on turn 5 minimum to get an effect out of it. And then even if you get the effect, like paying 5 for a single discard, that doesn't feel very good. A +2 attack this turn means you need something else to benefit from them. That also doesn't feel amazing. Maybe it helps you finish off a location, cool. And banishing a character is nice, but they have to be damaged, and Emerald is still in on this damage thing. So I don't know, maybe this will be a new way to do Emerald Steel with Bucky getting errated. Potential basically banned. He should just be banned. He effectively is banned with how bad the text they made on him. But I just know, I'm not a fan of this. I don't like hey, actually, you have to wait till turn 5 to play. Like, I don't want to play something with the stats of a Simba on turn 5 just so I can get a discard. That seems terrible. So I think Anna is quite bad. Halfway there, next we have Donald Duck Pie Slinger, 5 cost, inkable, 3/6 body, can shift 4, Humble Pie. When you play this character, if you use shift specifically to play him, your opponent loses 2 lore. That's fine. While an opponent has 10 or more lore, this character gets +6 attack. So if they have 10 lore when he enters, he is a 9/6, which is a heck of a body. Still dies to Maui. But I don't know. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of this card when it got revealed. And now that I've seen that Gaston card, which I think is naturally a 9/6, right? I don't remember his exact stature. He's like a 10/6 or something. This just seems even weaker. Like, you want the lore loss. You do not want to just pay 5 even for a 9/6 body, which is huge. That is huge on that number line. And obviously, it can just start beating into anything. But you can't do anything with it till turn 6 because you spent all your ink on turn 5. So I think you really want the shift to get the 2 lore steal. But also that kind of goes against his second effect that, if you're taking their lore, maybe you've now put them under 10, or maybe they weren't even close to 10. I don't know. I just don't know what kind of deck he's going in. And I'm thinking how tight all my Ruby lists are. I don't have a space for this guy. I need that spot for the removal for Maui, which does something the turn I play him. For Medusa, Tremaine, all these cards that immediately have an effect. And if he doesn't have that 6, like if you just play him on 5 and he's a 3/6 and he could just die to a Medusa, that doesn't feel very good. I don't know. Like, the art's kind of neat. Maybe there's some place for him I haven't seen. Maybe in Mufasa he's really good. Although usually Mufasa gets ahead of their opponent. So do you want to play a 3/6? And if he comes in off Mufasa, you don't get the shift effect anyway. Again, I just feel like there's got to be better uses for these slots. If someone knows what to do with Donald, show me the way. But especially in light of the Gaston, I just don't see it. I mean, he's a beater. If he comes in and they have 10 lore, but he doesn't even have rush. So, like, what if they're on 17 lore and you play Donald? Yeah, he can hit really hard, but he can't do it the turn he enters anyway. It's cool that, as a 9, he can take out any location, but I don't know. Maybe he'll be better in practice, but he reads very poorly to me. Then we have Robin Hood, which is a 4-cost uninkable, 1/4 body. Whenever this character quests, he quests for 2. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an action card with cost 6 or less and play it for free. Put the rest in your discard. That is a huge amount of cards as actions, songs, all that counts. He can't do Be Prepared because it's obviously 6 or less. But basically anything you pair this with, he's going to hit. That being said, his stat line is really, really bad. He dies to so much removal in Ruby. In Ruby. He dies to the little Sisu. That's not a good place to be. Obviously, Medusa, Brawl, all that. And with a 4 strength, he actually dies to a lot of steel removal, too. He'll survive a smash, but he can die to a, what's the card? Along Came Zeus. Anything that can do multiple instances of ping to grab your swords are going to clean him up. And then he obviously doesn't do anything the turn he gets played. And even, it's like, let's say he does live. He lives a turn. You do get to quest with him. You look at the top 4. First of all, if you miss, you also just discard all of that. And unless you're playing, I don't know, some item list where you want Tamatoa to get those items back, which you're probably not putting this card in there, you've just lost a bunch of cards. So that might feel bad. Maybe you're okay with it if they weren't good cards anyway. But then what are you trying to play with this? Like, are you playing Dragonfires now? Which means they obviously have to have something you want to banish. I mean, don't be wrong. Quest for free, banish your card. Like, that's super strong if you happen to hit it. So maybe you load it up with just a bunch of actions. What else could you hit that would just be that worth it? Dragonfire seems like a good hit. I mean, Whole New World, him questing and then Whole New World just triggering automatically doesn't seem like a terrible idea. Yeah. I'm very into consistency when it comes to cards. Like, when I'm building, I want cards that always do something. So on turn 4, when I play a goat or a rabbit, I draw a card and I get a lore. When I play a castle, I know what it is representing for that next turn. And then, locations are harder to deal with. That's why castle is strong. The fact that not only can it die to a lot of things, I need it to live a turn, and that's okay if the payoff is worth it, but then what if I quest and I completely whiff anyway? I don't know. I'm personally not willing to take that chance. I'm sure there are going to be people out there who will and are going to make it look really good, because clearly the ceiling on this is huge, but the downsides are just too much to make me want to personally play it. Moving on to Sapphire, here we have Mufasa. 8 cost, uninkable, 4/9 stat line. When you play this character, exert all cards in your inkwell, then return 2 cards at random from your inkwell to your hand. Quests for 4, and when he quests, ready every single card in your inkwell. So the ceiling on this card is clearly insane. In Final Fantasy, there's an element called Wind, which reactivates all your, what they call backups in that game. And it's so busted. It's one of the strongest things in the game. And we have nothing else that even comes close to this. So if he can quest, and you can reuse that ink. So let's say you play him exactly on turn 8. He puts 2 back in your hand, but your next turn you've already got Quill out, and you go right back up to 8, and you play Lucky Dime. Then he quests for 4, it untaps. Now you can use the dime or throw down Tamatoa. Like, the ceiling is just insane. One of the strongest cards we've seen in the game. However, there are a few things. It's obviously uninkable. That kind of sucks. I am curious to know if the first effect, Delicate Balance, might hurt you more than you think. That suddenly your ink is less. Like, don't get me wrong, returning cards to hand is always strong, as the Merlin Mim package has proved. But this is at random. You're not controlling what you bring back, and maybe you'll bring back something amazing. Maybe you had to ink Tamatoa on turn 1, and now you just got him back to your hand. That is super duper strong. Maybe you had to ink Lucky Dime early when you didn't want to, or someone used the new Hideaway card on it, and it comes back to your hand. That's going to feel good when it hits. But also, now you're down ink the next turn, and you do have to ink again and have something to use this on. However, his stats are very, very good for where the game is at. As a 9 body, I mean, Steel basically can't get rid of him. That means that the turn after he comes down, they're going to have to hit him with, 2 Zeus and a Tinkerbell, or... I mean, they can use all 4 Grab Your Swords and still not kill him, so he's basically immune to steel, which is awesome. And he dodges most of the ruby removal too. Medusa can't hit him unless they're also running ice block, which means they're on red-blue. Tremaine can get him if he's alone, but can't be brawled, can't be either of the Seasued. Obviously, Maleficent Dragon can get him, or Dragon Fire, but nobody runs those cards anymore. So because of his stat line, there's a really good chance he will actually stick around to quest with that ink. And that's assuming he comes in right at 8. If this guy comes in later, 10, 12, oh my goodness. Who cares if he puts 2 back in your hand? That might just be pure benefit at this point. So with all that going for him, like the body, I think especially because he dodges so much of the removal, it's very likely he's going to get to quest. Bust out your Let It Goes, I guess, if you're in blue, so you can send this guy packing. But yeah, he reads absurdly strong. And again, if you can use... Imagine you got 10 ink and you can use 10 and use it again. Like, oh my God. Like, you're just, how do you lose that game, right? So he seems kind of cracked. I'll be surprised if this one does not show up competitively. Also, one of the first ones we saw revealed, Merlin, our first pure search effect in the game, where he just adds it right to your hand instead of the top of your deck. 6 uninkable, 3/7 body, 2 quest. When you play him, you must shift him in for 5. Search your deck for any card, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck. Again, the ceiling on this card is absolutely insane. There is, here are all the Merlins we can use. They added this new 4-drop Merlin, so you can play this on 4, immediately shift onto this on 5. Oh, you're struggling? Hey, go ahead and go get Be Prepared, and then you're ready to use that on the next turn. You can get the best card for the situation. Or, oh, I've got a Sisu too. Let me go get big Sisu so I can guarantee wipe the board. Or actually, I'm in a good spot. You know what? I just need Flaversham right now to keep my cards going. Let me go ahead and get Flaversham. Clearly, the search is strong. Without the shift, though, he also does absolutely nothing. And so if you can't find this Merlin, and that happens in games of Lorcana, sometimes you just can't see the cards the way you need them. If you can't find a Merlin to shift onto, you just have a 6 cost in hand that's going to do absolutely nothing. And then he can die to a Medusa, so his body, it's not like he's immune to all forms of removal or anything. If you can consistently shift this card, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to really pay off for people. Blurple sounds like he would really like this as well. And then obviously without the shift, not nearly as strong. One thing I will say too as a side note, I don't know if it's going to be worth it if you're playing Blurple to shift this onto a rabbit or a goat. I think you really want rabbit and goat's exit effects. And unless it's winning you the game, I don't see why you would give up one of those. So I think you are going to want to either maybe use this new turtle or crab or this Merlin or something. So great potential for this card. And with steel, let's wrap it up. We've got Jafar, 6 cost, inkable, 0/7. Not ideally where you want to be, but challenger +7. So when he's attacking, he's a 7/7. Opposing characters with cost 4 or less can't challenge. Just can't challenge, period. And then 2 questing. So again, the ceiling on this card is nuts. That The body size is very good against Steel. Steel's going to have a lot of difficulty removing him. And then they just can't challenge. They can't challenge you. They can't challenge your locations. Like, if they're a low-to-the-ground deck, 4 and less is a lot of cards. That covers most of the cards people are going to be playing in the game. A Fox suddenly can't do anything. Maui can, but a Fox can't. A Goat can't. You know, any of those small little attackers, like, suddenly can't challenge at all. That's really good. Now, he does have an insane weakness to Ruby, since he can die to any form of Sisu, the baby one, Brawl, Medusa. Because he has no attack naturally, he can die to any single one of those removal spells. So that's a bit unfortunate. But Challenger 7 is also absolutely huge, where he can just take out a castle in one shot. So that's a lot of locations he can hit. And because you can pretty freely do that, because you know, even if they have a Fox, they can't challenge him in return. So yeah, I'll just take out your castle. Or he can challenge a Maui and live, and then still be around to challenge another thing. So unless you are specifically running into a red deck that happens to go, oh, that's really nice, you paid 6, okay, baby Sisu dead. That's going to feel terrible. But other than that, I think this card is going to pick on and beat up a lot of decks. Will that be enough to keep him out of the meta? We'll find out, but hitting for 7 is just brutal. And again, that floodgate effect is like, nope, you're not allowed to hit me in return. Just seems very unfair. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Arthur, 7 cost uninkable, 3/6 body, so he's the same as a Robin Hood from set 3. Can shift 5. When you play this character, don't have to shift, thank goodness. Quest for 3. Chosen character gains Challenger +2, Resist +2, and they can challenge ready characters this turn. That's awesome. This is a really, really good battle card. Hey, I've got whatever card you want, even a Smee. Suddenly, Smee's going to hit for 5. Oh, and he's going to take 2 less damage, and then you can take hitting readied characters is a huge, huge effect. Especially if you can do that in turn 5 when they're not expecting it, and then he can quest immediately. Like, that seems really strong. Turn 5, shift him in, have your Robin Hood take something out because now it hits for 5, and Robin Hood's going to gain 2 lore. Then Arthur's immediately going to quest for 3 lore. That's 5 lore. That's a 4th of your win condition. That seems really strong. I think he's a lot weaker on 7. Especially since he's uninkable, but at least you get the effect right away. So as long as you have something else to take advantage of it, like, could you imagine having a Tinkerbell down and you play this guy, suddenly Tinkerbell's hitting for 6 and she's taking less damage, and then she's going to get her ping effect too? Like, that seems really good. These steel lists tend to have kind of tight slots though. They have a really good balance of like removal and bodies. So especially if you're not playing him with ramp and so you can't get him out a little earlier, are you going to want to wait till turn 7 potentially for this card? I don't know. He might be a hair slow for that, but man, his effect is so strong. There's no... Okay, this is the only other Arthur in Steel. It's turn 2, 5. Yeah, I mean, you could maybe use this one. Obviously, if you're in another color, you can lean into one of these. That's interesting. Huh. Yeah, anyway, the effect's very strong, so Tinkerbell just seems like such a knockout candidate for that. But if you were in Steel Purple, like, imagine using this with a Fox. Fox can hit for 6, takes 2 less damage, and can... Oh, you thought that thing was safe because it was ready. Surprise! Actually, I got it. So this is a really cool card. I like this one a lot. And that's it for all the legendaries for Shimmering Skies. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Look forward to some deck techs coming out on the channel right after this. Got a lot of fun decks and cards clearly to experiment with. And if you've got some great ideas for some of these legendary cards, I would love to try to make some decks around them. So if you've got some suggestions, what their best color combination is, stuff I missed, please let me know in the comments below. I appreciate it. Look forward to more Lorcana content coming out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, take care.